Hello, and welcome to the Bellingham Real Estate Podcast. I'm Paul Balzotti. I'm here with Cal Leenstra. Welcome, Cal.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me in.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we are talking about really the history of Bellingham real estate in, or at least over the last, 30, 40 years. And Cal, you're kind of I like to call you an OG. You know what an OG is, right?
Yeah.
Original gangster of real estate in Bellingham. And
Nice talk.
yeah. And so I want to talk to you about the kind of what real estate used to be like, how it's changed, how the landscape of real estate has evolved in Bellingham and Whatcom County. Cal is also an investor and also a commercial broker.
Yes.
So a lot to cover. So let's just get right into it. So
Good.
For you, when did you first break into the real estate business?
Well, I started in 1968. It's hard to believe that's 53 years ago.
Okay, so we're talking about 50 plus years of real estate.
Yeah. I was working in Phoenix, Arizona as a sales manager for CCIM Corporation. My father-in-law had this business, Kelstrup Realtors. He always wanted me to go in, but I always wanted to do something else, which I did, and was pretty successful at it. But finally, he had some troubles health-wise and convinced me we should move back to Bellingham, which we did. And I bought in the business, about 50% of the business. So that was in 1968. Things were a little different then. The office that we had then, and Arnold didn't even own the business, didn't even own the structure. I think it's good to talk about what the offices were like then.
Yeah.
So when I started, I think that office that my father-in-law had, and which I brought into, was maybe 5 or 6 desks in a rented building.
Yeah.
Near Levin's Furniture, which is maybe before your time.
I think possibly.
Yeah, it's across from where the Rocket is now.
Okay. Yeah.
So 5 or 6, I wouldn't call them high producers at the time, and very casual business. Sales were nothing like they are today, just totally different. Old equipment, which was up to date at the time, like we had a Verifax photocopy machine, which was quite a problem to make a photocopy today. You know, stick it in the machine and hit the button, bam, we got it. Then it was a tray. It was a tray of liquid with a light like that on top. There's 2 kinds of paper, positive and negative. You put your original in between those 2 papers, you expose it to the light, then you peel them apart and run them through this bath. It took about, and then you peel it apart, sorry, and then you lay it out to dry. So it was about 5 or 10 minute ordeal, just totally awkward. So things have changed big time as far as equipment and scanning and all that is concerned. Sometime later, I talked Arnold in the idea of buying our own office.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was unusual that a guy in the real estate business didn't own a real estate office.
Mm-hmm.
So you might think about
that. I was
that.
going to say, I'm like, we might be renting in Berkeley Village right now. Yeah.
So we did buy another building.
I own my own house.
Yeah, that's good.
But the office building, of course. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah. But just for anybody listening.
Yeah. So anyway, bought an office building, and it was quite a lot larger than our old office. Fixed that up and hired agents.
And that was is that the one that was on Lakeway?
No,
that's
we
before
built that later. This
Okay.
was at 307 West Holly. Only moved a half a block. It would be south of where the Rocket is now.
Okay.
I think it's a tavern now.
Yeah.
So we bought that, fixed it up, and hired people, and off to the races. I mean, we've got a lot of people. We got not a lot of people because units at that time were small, maybe 5, 10 people at the most.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we kept hiring and kept selling and started to outgrow our premises there.
Mm-hmm.
And about that time, that was about 1972, maybe 4 years after I bought in. Arnold, that was my father-in-law, wanted to get out of the business. And Frank Mouillat was interested in starting a business. So I talked to Frank, and he agreed that maybe we'd be good partners, which we were. So we were together for 15 plus years. About 1972, we were way too constrained. We had maybe 20 some agents, and we had training, and we had all sorts of activities that required more space. So we were pretty young. I think Frank was 24, 25, and I was about 8, 9 years older.
Mm-hmm.
We decided, well, what we need is a brand new building, which we did. We hired an architect from Seattle and had him design a building.
Mm.
And we built that thing. And it's the building now. It's 315 Lakeway, a big brick
Mm-hmm.
Class A building. Other brokers in town thought we were absolutely crazy that we'd go broke in a year because making payments on that building.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever did that then. They never had a structure that looked like a professional office,
Mm.
They're just dumpy little rental places mostly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a big change. That was a big change. I think we kind of started the ball rolling then. Windermere later built their own office, and a couple other brokers built their own office, and
Well, that's
real estate was better,
Yeah, well, that's jumping ahead further because Windermere wasn't here until 10, 20 years after that, I think. After
yeah.
you,
Well, yeah, it was quite a bit after the
Yeah.
Windermere built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me jump back to that time when 1968, 1970.
Mm-hmm.
My dad started, I think, in the late 70s, and I haven't asked him this question in a long time, but that's late 1960s. Now it's like, okay, you get your real estate license, still easy to get your real estate license. Some people don't, or a lot of people don't make it, right? There's over 1,000 real estate licenses in Whatcom County. Back then, somebody comes into your office, wants to work in real estate. Was the landscape similar in that, has real estate always been kind of a low barrier entry thing that people kind of came in and out of? And was the perception of realtors any different, or has it always been kind of the same?
Well, I think there weren't that many barriers to entry.
So it's always been that's always been the same.
But it was up to the individual broker. Like I had been trained by a national corporation on how to hire and how to train and how to make people produce, which nobody did that much in Whatcom County at that time. So I think we were a little more selective.
Yeah, and we try to be selective now. I mean,
And because training is costly and takes a lot of time, you might as well train somebody that's going to do something and produce.
Yeah.
So I think the barriers to entry were low, but it was up to the individual office to change that.
That's a good point.
So
it was just the same, and you guys were trying to be a more premier place to work.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We thought we were pretty fancy. During that time, especially when we built the new building, most people were wearing suits, 3-piece suits.
Yeah.
It was very corporate.
Nice.
So that's changed a lot since then. But yeah,
Well,
the office itself has made huge, the structure itself has made huge changes since 1968.
Well,
I mean, it's a commitment now if you're a broker.
Well, what do you mean by the commitment?
Well, if you're going to have your office, you need to be committed and be able to finance that. So that requires production, sales, profit.
Yeah.
So,
well, and so when you and Frank Moyat now has the Moyat Group, right?
Right.
And now it's really his son Troy has the the Moyat Group. And so they're still there. We don't have to talk about why you guys obviously must have broke up at some point, but
well, Frank, we were partners for a long time. I bought him out, and then he worked for me for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Then he decided he wanted to get back in the business
and start his own. And he went right across the street and built a building.
Right. That's okay. I mean, it's free country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, and just to catch everybody up, the Prudential Kelstrup was eventually, Gordy Stafford bought you out.
Right.
And then eventually John L. Scott Real Estate bought
him
that office out.
Yeah.
And that brought you over here.
Correct.
And that was maybe 15 years ago. But skipping back a little bit, so we get back into the 60s and 70s. You have a kind of a boutique premier place. I love that you had that mentality that you had learned. Okay, we're gonna hire good people, train them. Then you guys build a brand new building, which I'm sure attracted.
Oh yeah,
and people to you.
Best people.
And But you've also always done commercial sales and
Correct.
invested yourself. How did that evolve and kind of shape, kind of your career? Were you kind of always investing, or did you mainly just sell for a long time and then thought, shoot, like how did that happen?
Well, I think my first investment was when I was a poor college student at University of Washington. I bought a 20-acre parcel outside of Ferndale for uh, 2000, sound right, $2,000 with $500 down. So that was
Yeah.
$100 an acre, which wasn't that unusual. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
at that time, about $100 an acre,
Mm-hmm.
150, something like that. Well, now that property is just on the sort of the edge of the urban growth area. I still have it.
Mm.
It's worth more than $2,000. And that was probably early, maybe late 50s, early 60s, because I hadn't graduated yet.
Oh wow.
So that was the first investment.
And you still own it.
Still own it.
Wow. Very impressive.
And after that, I finally convinced Arnold, my father-in-law, we should buy some lots on Lakeway near where the Woods Coffee is now.
Mm-hmm.
So we did buy some lots there. He was kind of reluctant, but I convinced him it'd be a good deal.
Yeah.
So it was vacant lots, and then along comes Fred Meyer.
Yeah.
So they needed that property,
Mm.
and so serendipitous happening, we were able to sell that to him at a modest profit, shall
Yeah.
we say.
Yeah.
And then Arnold was in on this deal, but we bought an old house in the corner where Woods Coffee is today, just across the road from Freddie.
Mm-hmm.
And that had a house on it. We rented it for quite a while, and then it started to be a commercial site.
Was I-5 there at that time?
Yeah,
Okay, this is after
yeah,
I-5 because
yeah,
I-5
yeah,
would have been, yeah, that's right, because that would
yeah,
have been
yeah,
about 20 years
yeah.
later or something.
So we bought that piece along with some property next to it and rented it for a long time. Make a long story short, we sold it to a investor who had Pizza Hut on the line
Mm-hmm.
for a shop, which
Mm-hmm.
they built, and he leased the shop and the land. Later, that was torn down, and then Woods Coffee came in there. Woods Coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Not too far down that same road, we bought some old houses that had extra land with them. And lo and behold, wouldn't you know, the hotel came along and wanted to buy it.
Well, and I'm
So
also seeing you also were investing a lot right in that area. I mean,
yeah,
right off that Lakeway area.
yeah,
This is where you have
exactly.
your brand new building.
Right.
There's the Fred
Yeah,
Meyer.
yeah, yeah.
That doesn't seem like a coincidence,
No, I just thought it looked like a good area.
to invest in.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it turned out it was.
So, and when you're doing this, you're in real estate, you're investing. Are you grabbing partners? What was happening first? Was it you're out there being a realtor, and then you see an opportunity and you think, I want to do this, and then you bring somebody else in, or
Yeah.
were you thinking, and were you more into the sales or more into the investing, or was it kind of 50
No,
50?
I was more into sales, but
Okay.
investing is a natural
Yeah.
next step.
Right.
You know the business,
Yeah.
you know the market, and you have to have some courage
Yeah.
because it's a risky business somewhat.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that risky, but a lot of people do. But so yeah, sometimes we had partners. We had partners in some property we bought up in Blaine, 7.5 acres industrial site. And we kept that for a couple of years. I sold it to a Chinese pharmaceutical company who never did anything with it. As a matter of fact, I just resold it about 6 or 8 months ago for $2 million.
Really?
It wasn't my property, it was
Yeah.
theirs.
Yeah.
They went on a different direction and didn't develop. And we had some partners originally in a nice piece of property at Meridian and Kellogg. We stepped up, bought that property from some real estate brokers for $5 a foot. This is where the garden, the
Yeah.
Olive Garden is, and
Yeah.
the hotel and that medical building.
Sure.
I had some partners on that backed out at the last minute. Here's a wetland right in the middle of the property.
Mm.
And it was just a time that wetlands were becoming a problem.
Yeah.
Well, they backed out. I bought it. I mean, that's risky.
Mm-hmm.
And then we developed Toll Road in the back, or I did. And along comes Sid Barron, the Barron Group. He wanted to build a hotel there, so we peeled off the back piece, and he built a hotel, big one, and later needed the front piece there, so we sold that to him. He put the Olive Garden in there, plus that medical building to the north.
Yeah.
So these brokers, they sold for $5, which I thought was a pretty low price, but hey, they were happy to sell it.
So you're saying that the only reason I can get all you can eat soup, salad, and breadsticks today is because you put in the work to get that Olive Garden there. Thank you, Cal.
Well, you're welcome.
Well, so as far as when you said investing is, you don't really think of it as risky. Now, today,
there's risk, but I mean, the reward is supersedes the risk in most cases. For us, anyway, we're in the business.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And so it's like we can have a more rational sense of what's a good deal, what's not a good deal, and see more things.
Yeah.
Now, as far as when you think about today, right now, and you look back, when you say, "Oh, this was $100, this was $500, this is $1,000," inflation, of course, is the big thing there, right? But but
your investments is protected from inflation, in real estate.
Yes, and so do you see, when you look today, we're in a market right now where home prices are dropping a little bit, and then everybody's saying, okay, maybe now is a good time to rent, or maybe it's not a good time to buy because rates are. When you look at a market like this, and just where prices are now and where the dollar is now and everything like that, and it's okay to be completely honest, as far as, do you think of then as a better, or certain periods over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years as more opportune? Or is it kind of like, do you think that somebody's going to be doing this same interview 50 years from now and saying, wow, I bought this for,
do I think so?
Yeah. Do you feel like it's always...
But looking at that question from, say,
maybe not even 50 years, but even 5 years.
Okay. But if let's say you're going to buy an apartment house now.
Right.
And the interest rate's 7.
Right.
And the cap rate's 5.
Mm-hmm.
You're going backwards. I wouldn't do that unless there was a big potential for upside in rents, which there isn't, like right now.
Right.
So you got to be careful. I mean, rates are high. That means cap rates are going to be higher.
Yeah. Well, but
that means that the values are going to go down. So you got to watch what you're doing.
Yeah, but you've bought when it's 15%, 18% rates, right?
Yeah, I had a high tolerance for risk. I bought the Bellingham Medical Center.
Yeah.
Which is now the police are in there, the Bellingham police.
Yeah.
I should have never sold that piece of property. But Frank and I owned it, and then I bought Frank out. No, Benson and Frank and I owned it, and then I bought them all out.
Yeah.
Kept it, and then the city condemned it because they wanted it for their police department. That's 3.5 acres on the creek. Can you imagine 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stories with condos on top and retail on the bottom on that creek right there downtown? That's a dynamite piece of property.
Yeah.
But I had a 10% first mortgage on that, which I wanted to retain because that was a low rate then in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted some money for something else. Whoops, sorry. So I got a second mortgage for 20%. Kept the 10%.
Yeah.
Got a second for 20% and just waited out the storm. Well, things turned back to normal. But in the late 70s, early 80s, with 10, 11% inflation, 10, 11% interest, that was tough.
Do you see any parallel from that to right now?
Well, I hope that the inflation doesn't get that bad.
Right.
Yeah, that was a real tough period. You really couldn't sell too much real estate that could be financed with the bank, so we were selling owner carry mostly.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't out of business.
Yeah,
we changed the business. The owner carry and the owner recognized that he wasn't going to sell his property unless he carried the paper. So it's just coming to an understanding of reality.
Yeah. So maybe you wouldn't buy an apartment at a 5% cap rate. You're right. So if rates are at 7, you want to see that cap rate go to a 9 or 10 or something like that.
Yeah. And there's
And
quite a
yeah,
lag. You got to watch that lag as the rates are 7, and right now the sellers think they need 5 on the cap. Well, they need to be have a new acquaintance with reality. It ain't going to happen unless there's some big upside for rent increase, or way under rented, something
right.
like that. But
Yeah.
if it's rented at market and the cap they are seeking is 5 and the interest the buyer has to pay is 7, that won't work.
That's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point. So that does kind of,
It'll work, but you have reverse leverage,
yes,
and that's a
exactly.
bad thing.
So you're right. So there's, if you think then in particular right now with multifamily, there's probably, I've been mainly following single family condo. I haven't really been looking at the metrics for multifamily, but surely depreciation has to be happening, more negotiation, prices dropping on multifamily right now.
Right.
Because because you basically, the way to get the higher cap rate is just to pay less money for the property, essentially.
Exactly. So you got the double whammy of decreasing rents. Rents are not increasing.
Well, are rents really decreasing right now?
Well,
Are
they're
they?
going to if they are
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So you're going to have increasing vacancy
Yeah.
and increasing interest. That's a bad combination,
Yeah. So
I think. I mean,
yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
might argue that.
Now,
They'd be wrong.
Yeah.
They could argue that.
but I kind of feel like, but then at the same time, when you're in a market like this, you also, I could see rates going back down in the spring a little bit and then everything popping back off again. So I also think this winter, there's going to be opportunities for people to get some deals for some sellers who need to move their property, right?
Correct. But they're not going to sell it at a 5 cap.
No, you're right. Yeah, you got to get the cap up. Yeah, got to get the cap up. But
Yeah.
you're still bullish about the continued appreciation in this Pacific Northwest. If
Yeah, there's a big shortage of apartments. And
Yeah.
they're finishing them like there's no tomorrow. There's still a shortage of housing in Bellingham and
Yeah.
across the United States.
So you still feel good about if somebody's investing right now for 5 or 10 years from now or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if they buy it right,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
where your profit is. You
Yeah.
have to buy it right.
That's a good way to put it. It's like, it's now a good time to buy if you buy right.
Yes, it is. Yeah, there's less competition.
Yeah, and there is less competition to buy, so you have more leverage to, make those offers and negotiate more.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the practice. We talked about a little bit about investing, selling real estate. This is the last thing I wanted to kind of run by you. The practice was back then, obviously you did open houses. If you had great connections with people, you had newspaper ads. What do you think is the most different first? Well, I know there's going to be some things we could finish on what's the same, but just a couple things that come to mind.
Okay.
What's the most different?
Right.
Like walking into the office now, you're in real estate now. How is it so much different than it used to be?
Well, the biggest thing when we started, or I started, no computers,
Yep.
no cell phone. We did have a cell phone.
Uh,
It was like this. This is a advanced.
oh, yes, you brought it. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so if you're listening to the podcast,
the predecessor to this was a brick, twice as
yes.
big as this.
So if you're
This
listening,
is a big advancement.
so if you're listening on the podcast and not watching, Cal brought in the old phone, and it weighs probably
Pound.
probably a couple pounds at least. And this is probably an analog. Looks like a
Yeah.
walkie-talkie, basically.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, the difference now and then is the equipment. Big difference. We talked about the photocopy machine.
Mm-hmm.
We had no computer. We actually did have a computer at Kelstrup's. It was not really a computer. It was a black box that would send information to Chicago. We were avant-garde
Mm-hmm.
on investment analysis.
Yeah.
And it would send all that information to Chicago. Chicago would put it on a great big computer the size of a house.
Yeah.
And then they would send it back to us on teletype.
Mm.
So we had a teletype machine,
Mhm.
probably 1969 or somewhere like that,
Mm-hmm.
that would do investment analysis, depreciation, appreciation, net income,
Mhm.
taxable income, blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
which is very difficult to do by hand. Takes forever. So we did have that computer, but we didn't have computers. We weren't on the internet. We did get pretty fancy and put two-way radios in all the agents' cars.
Nice.
So we had a base station at the office, which was handled by the receptionist, and every agent had a Motorola radio too, like the police have.
Yeah.
So that helped our intra-office communication quite a bit, and also helped those guys make appointments. I'd like to see your house, and how about 5 minutes? They were really surprised when they were there
Yeah.
because he was calling from
Yeah.
outside the
Yeah.
house about maybe 2 houses away.
Mhm.
So yeah, equipment, huge difference. The office facility, huge difference. The training, huge difference. Selection, huge difference.
So that's the computers, the speed of everything, all of that has changed quite a bit. The equipment, what has stayed the same?
Marketing in
Stayed the
general.
same.
Yeah.
Stayed the same.
Well, it's still people business,
Right.
maybe to a lesser degree. Still, if you're going to succeed in the business, you have to be committed to work at it. You need to be able to sell the listing or the seller or the prospective buyer on why they should list with you if that's what you're after. And there's a lot of reasons. And if it's a seller, why they should buy with you. So you have to establish the rapport and do all the things we used to do.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
not much change there. It's
Yeah.
just the initial marketing of the product that I think has really changed with the internet, photography, all that, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, if they're still in business, all that stuff, total change. We used to market only by the Bellingham Herald, and we'd have maybe $100,000 in advertising in the Bellingham Herald in a year. So that was the main thing, People called on the Herald, and your open houses were in the Herald. And good agents looked at those FISBOs, called them, or if they couldn't call them, they'd look up the phone number in the reverse directory, find out where that house was, then
Yeah.
trot out there and offer their services.
If somebody put it in the paper themselves for sale by owner, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But see what I don't know, you guys probably never used the reverse directory, but
There's a couple agents in our office who use reverse directory sometimes to look up expired properties and for sale by owners.
Well, it works great for FISBOs because their phone number was in there.
Yeah.
And then you could look up in the reverse directory to find out the address, then go and knock on the door.
Well, and we don't do a lot of cold calling necessarily, but what we do is, let's say you have a buyer that is looking for something that's not in the market. You pull up the property. That's a great way also, is to reverse prospect and to look up. And so, but a little bit less boots on the ground work, a little bit more on the internet. It's interesting. Like now you think of some of the biggest wealthiest real estate people are actually kind of internet, people that are like Glenn Sanford, EXP.
Started at Kelstrup's.
Oh yeah. Oh, you did? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It started with you. Okay.
Yes,
So
he did.
EXP.
Now
Started
has a
there.
70-foot boat, Ocean.
Yeah, exactly. And his company's completely online.
80-some thousand agents.
Yeah. And it's completely cloud-based, right?
Yeah.
And then you have, the Ben Kenny team, which is also, they did a lot of stuff online. And so a lot of the biggest names now made their, and even for our office, one of the things that, we're doing things like podcasts, and we're doing a lot of social media advertising, and that is, you're right, that's a way things have moved, but at the end of the day, it's still a people business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
so the technicalities have changed, but the sales part of it's pretty much the same, I think.
thank you for joining, Cal. I love this. I've been looking forward to. How long have I been trying to get you on the podcast?
Well, a long time.
Not as long as you've been in the business, 50-something years, but quite a while.
Yeah.
So, and how long have you been married too?
65 years.
65 years. Wow.
Wow, think of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
65. Just got out of high school.
Yeah. 65 years married. And then you've owned real estate for 55, 60 years. And then you've been in the real estate business for over 50. So that's an absolutely, and there's a lot of accolades. He's been the Realtor Association president. He's a CCIM. Like I said, an OG, a legend of the business, and we're honored to continue to work with you, Cal. And thanks for joining us today, my friend.
Well, thanks for letting me in. I
All
can't
right.
get in every place, you know.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Cheers.